Hey Broncos country, we're here in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. I am your team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, staying alongside our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. A lot of buzz happening at the NFL Combine. It's always a lot of fun when you kind of come out and see coaches and everyone kind of mingling amongst each other. We heard from head coach Sean Payton and Broncos general manager George Paton earlier today. What are your initial thoughts from their press conferences?
Well, I thought the funniest moment was when Sean Payton, who was next to Pete Carroll, the new coach for the Las Vegas Raiders, said that he wanted to thank Pete because Sean is still the youngest coach in the AFC West, an absolutely packed division there with Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and of course Sean Payton and Pete Carroll. But no, I think overall the sentiment today was, one, you've got to take advantage of this window of having a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. And obviously the Broncos found their guy a year ago. I mean, think back to 12 months ago, we're all wondering who's going to be the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Are they going to get a guy in the draft? Sean Payton said, we've got to nail it there. We've got to find a way to get that right, and they did in Bo Nix, and now it changes everything about this offseason. George Paton said, we're still going to build. We're still going to want to build this team organically. Obviously, through the draft is how they've always done it, but you do want to take advantage of that rookie quarterback window, a rookie contract, maybe be a little bit more aggressive. So that stood out to me, just that they recognize the opportunity that they have here. They've got to take advantage of it. And also, coming off a 10-win season that surprised a lot of folks, but I think internally was expected. It's now, how do you take the next step? And I thought what stood out to me was, while Sean Payton particularly was confident, thought that they learned some things about themselves last year, you also have to remember that you're starting over and you're starting from scratch, and that you can't just expect to start at that 10-win level. You've got to go back out there and earn it, and seems like the Broncos leadership is poised to do just that.
You've also heard Coach Payton talk about joker players, and George Paton mentioned is kind of looking for the Loch Ness Monster out there. Definitely a player with a unique skill set that they kind of are trying to find to fit this team. What are your takeaways, and just kind of what do you think of what they can find in the draft potentially?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Sean Payton talked about the importance of that joker position. We've heard him talk about it a lot over the last couple of years. I think we saw Marvin Mims a little bit fill that role toward the end of last season, but certainly at his end-of-season press conference, Sean Payton talked about how nice it is to have that player. George Paton said that he's seen what it's like when that player is in Sean Payton's offense and what it does to an opposing defense. But I also think it's important to remember you can get it in different ways, whether it's through free agency or the draft. And also, it can't be at any cost, as Sean Payton said, right? Like, it's still got to make sense, and they're going to look for that player. And whether, we've seen a lot of players kind of linked to the Broncos in the first round because of Sean Payton talking about that joker player. But he was also asked, how can that help a young quarterback in Bo Nix? He said, well, it could also help if you get a really good interior defensive lineman or a pass rusher or a corner, or, any good player is going to help develop this team. And so you can't reach, I don't think, but obviously we know just from experience what it looks like when Sean Payton has that player in his offense, and it's scary, for opposing defenses. But as George Paton said, you might have to go swimming a little bit, find that Loch Ness Monster for this Broncos offense.
There's a lot of talent in this draft, specifically at the running back position, even the tight end position. Where are some kind of angles you can kind of see the Broncos going?
Yeah, well, George Paton did say the Broncos are still considering re-signing Javonte Williams, right, who will be a free agent, George Paton's second ever draft pick, and talks about him as one of the best pass protectors in the NFL. So you don't want to rule Javonte out, certainly, but George Paton, talk about there's different flavors, right, in this draft of runner, and so what do you want there? Obviously, we know from Sean Payton's experience that if a player can make an impact in the passing game, that's important as well. But I think you'll see over the coming weeks. Free agency is just a few weeks away here. They've got to add in some different ways. Sean Payton talked a little bit about Audric Estime, Blake Watson, Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyler Bidet, so some options internally as well. But I think that this is a position that, as Sean Payton said, the running game has to be a focus. They have to be better there. They do view the offensive line as one of the strengths. So what do you have to do to make that click? And obviously, again, in my mind, it kind of all links back to how do you help Bo Nix? How do you help this offense? If you can get a run game going, I think that's only going to unlock even more what Bo can do in year two.
With the draft coming up, there's always that balance between signing veteran players during free agency and then using your draft picks efficiently. The Broncos are picking first in the first round and the second round.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time in a long time that they've had first and second round picks based on trades. And I think, number one, what that does is it gives you flexibility, as George Paton said, right? Like, when you have a first round pick or you have a second round pick, you can maneuver a little bit. And we've seen the Broncos over the last couple of years. Like last year, they stayed put and picked Bo Nix at 12 overall. Didn't have that second round pick. A couple of years ago, you have to wait to get till Marvin Mims is your pick, right? You have to wait till Nick Bonito falls to you. I believe it's 64 overall. So you haven't had that ability to maneuver as much. And we know Sean Payton and George Paton, they both love to make trades in the draft, whether it's up or down. And having a first and second round pick can kind of help you do that. Maybe a second round pick helps you move up in the first round. Maybe you can package those and move back a little bit and get more picks. But I think at 20 in particular, it's a little different than 12 or 9 a few years ago when they got Pat Surtain, right? Like, I think it's a little bit more difficult to project. And what George Paton said is you really just want to have 4 guys or so that you really like still there at 20. And something that stood out to me was he said, I don't see much of a gap between the 10th overall pick and the 20th overall pick in terms of talent. So it sounds like when the Broncos make their selection, assuming they stay at number 20, they're going to have some good options available. And whether it's a joker, a defensive player, or whoever, find a really good piece to add to this team.
It'll be very exciting to see how everything plays out over the next couple of months. Once again, we are here at the NFL Combine. I'm your team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, staying alongside, as always, our lead writer, Aric DiLalla.